Welcome to Penguin's Wanderlust. This is Penguin and Penny are proud to introduce Jessica Cohen, who is an artist that we've met here at Wasteland Weekend. And we are going to be talking about her career as a full-time artist. And how did you arrive at becoming a full-time artist a decade ago?
Well, I have an art degree, and when I got out of school, it was at the beginning of the gaming boom, and we all thought it would last forever, so I got out feeling pretty confident. My original interest in art was classical illustration, so I was, a Arthur Rackham and a Howard Pyle and an N.C. Wyeth fan, and then, later on Brian Froud and and Alan Lee. But, so I thought I would bring something sort of more romantic and traditional as far as the drawing skills. And then I got out and those jobs were drying up. And it went from a guaranteed position to freelance, because then the companies didn't have to give you any benefits. So a lot of people who I knew who had gotten really great jobs, all of them ended up pounding the pavement at the same time as we were graduating. So I spent some time doing a regular corporate job, like running an office, while I was coming home and painting. And eventually I just realized that I could not work every day in a cube and feel like a sane person. So I gradually just started to focus more and more on the art. And for the last 3 years, I'd like to say I have just about made it work. I still do some part-time stuff every once in a while to make sure that bills that get paid on time are supposed to be paid on time.
Right.
Because being an artist also means waiting to be paid.
Yeah.
And, I don't have an accounting department who's going to send a giant angry man to them. I have to just politely email frequently. So it's been a long, slow development, but it just seemed like I had to do it. Because making stuff is what makes me happy, but that's kind of a privilege right now, so I had to wait till I found a thing that made sense to enough people that I could sell enough of them. So a lot of it was just coming to the place where I was aware of that.
What kinds of art do you do?
I'm a trained children's book illustrator, so I started off doing pen and ink and watercolor, really technical and detailed. The people who I grew up being impressed by, of course I tried to emulate at some level, and then at some point you just develop your own thing based on the skills you learn. So I did a lot of watercolor, pen and ink, and then I started to sort of branch into mixed media, and I've done some interesting work where I scanned each of the individual components. So I do the drawing, and I scan the drawing, and then I do the painting, and I scan the painting, and then I layer those things together. So in the end, and then sometimes I'll manipulate them or add in pieces of photographs, or random things. I've taken pictures of myself and then found pieces of something from a magazine and cut it out, almost like a collage. And then for the cards that I did all that, and then I printed them out large format, and then I painted on top of them, then I rescanned them. So I've been sort of developing a media. I really love the idea of it being multimedia and that the end product is digital, because that's just so versatile. But I also love the hands-on part. I don't like to be 100% separated from what I'm doing.
Have you found that the children's book market has sort of dried up too, with all the self-publishing that people do?
I don't think so. It's really about the marketing.
So the children's...
So the children's book, I don't really think that self-publishing is profoundly affecting children's book. I think that marketing is what affects children's book. And my experience of the industry itself is that nobody wants to take a risk, and I think that that's a problem for a lot of different published art forms in our culture, like movies. Everybody wants a guaranteed blockbuster. So what you see most of is very talented writers who have sold books in the past, have done well, get teamed up with lesser known illustrators in order to launch an illustration career. Or a great illustrator can on occasion be attached to an upcoming writer that they have a lot of confidence in to sort of launch their career. And there seem to be only a certain number of illustrators and authors consistently published. There doesn't seem to be a lot of new people breaking ground, unless of course you're a celebrity and you want to do a book on, you know, against bullying or how to cook with your child, or you know,
where their name gets
them published. Which on occasion there's a good book in that, but it's for something that has the word children involved in it. It's like a fairly cutthroat business. I've done some small scale stuff. I did a series of learning CDs. The first one was J. Rogers' School for Pirates. Oh, cool. And then the second one is Peter Neptune's Mermaid Tales. And they were CDs filled with great songs. The Black family, they're famous for Irish music, folk music. They appear on these albums. It was put together by a friend of mine, John Gallagher, who's a super talented composer and storyteller and story writer and lyricist. And so he put it together, and the Blacks were interested in helping out, and a lot of really well-known, mostly folk music, studio musicians got involved. So the music's beautiful. So I did all the art for those, and they have been really well received by the American librarians. But it's interesting. It's getting played in libraries, and everybody I know who ran out and got a CD because I did the drawings. And said that it was non-stop played in their cars on long trips with their kids, which was lovely. But that's mostly self-published, and so I think it's very hard to market something like that.
Do you have a Patreon page?
That is my next move. I had not even heard of it till I started the cards, and I had like a series of unfortunate mishaps before I made it out this year, so my scheduling just got pushed back farther and farther, and I had to work really hard to meet the print deadline, so I didn't get a lot of stuff like that done. But Patreon, when I discovered it, I was blown away, and I feel like it's a wonderful idea, and so I was thinking I might do it because I'd really like this to be ongoing, and I'd like a lot of people involved. I'd like a lot of personal stories from Wasteland involved. I think that would really ground it and make it feel very real to participants.
Yeah, that would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I recognized your tribe right away.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. Yeah.
I was like, that's that tribe that I keep following everything that they do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I really lucked out with the women I hooked up with and who put this all together. It's kind of a rare thing as an adult to stumble into a group of people and like spontaneously click. Yes. Like making new friends. I find as I get older, you have so little time for people you love anyway, that you tend to gravitate back to that small group. And that's both a blessing and, you know, in some ways you're missing out opportunities meeting new people. And all these women were women who had been peripheral to me, and I had seen them at events and things, but we had not really sat down. And
so what was the compelling thing for doing it this year?
Miranda, who came up with the name cimotA and the overarching vision for what we were going to do. cimotA is just atomic backwards.
Oh, okay. I've been wondering where that name
That's where it came from.
Okay.
So Miranda every once in a while uses her beautiful, amazing home. She is refurbishing over time a beautiful old Victorian with a carriage house and back. And I love the way she furnishes. Everything about it. So she sometimes has events in her home for friends, and it turned out that some other people I knew her and were getting married. So I got invited to the wedding, and then all of a sudden all of us were in a room together. And in a social event that was much smaller, because it was an intimate wedding, much smaller than, say, a festival, and we started speaking, and then I don't remember the conversation, but suddenly Miranda just said, I think that you would get this. This is my idea. Have you heard of Wasteland Weekend? And I said, yes, and I've already and I have all these plans, but I never put it together. And then we started talking, and it just happened.
And you've accomplished so much for just being your first year.
We spent a lot of time on this. Yeah, this is a lot of weekends. Yeah. But it was
turned out fantastic.
Oh, and it was really fulfilling. Like, it was good to be with them, sit in a circle and make things. And make things that are kind of the opposite end of what I normally do with my art. Like I'm really a careful planner and a powerful, like polisher. Like I like to get in and noodle and finish things perfectly, but
part to loosen up a little.
Part of the wonder of this is
yeah.
that letting it be what it is really the idea, and that's a hard concept for me in some ways. My life is sort of what it is, so I go to my art for this cleanliness and focus of vision. And this for me was like, I love it, it's beautiful, but I'm so controlled, how can I? So it took me a while, but in the very end, after, I don't know, we've been working on it for almost 6 months, I had like this epiphany where I was like, I can do this, I can just be in the moment and make the thing, and it felt good.
Cool. You guys should certainly feel proud about your couple and all the workshops you've been giving. I made this God's Eye in a workshop here.
That was with Liv. Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah. And I'm just wondering how we're doing for time. Let me just 4 minutes. Good. What's your favorite children's book? Like, I buy children's book because they're of the great illustrations.
Yes, I'm a big illustration.
Some of the British ones are like really great.
Exquisite, yeah.
There's one called Monster Mama that's done with the spray, however you call that. Airbrush, and just phenomenal. And the mother lives in the back of the house in a cave, and she tells her kid that they don't need to come, and she doesn't need to meet her friends. It's just enough that she makes the cookies. And it's just from being a mother at that time, I just found, that's great, But the story and the illustration. So do you have a favorite?
While I was growing up, I think the thing I read the most was Where the Wild Things Are. And then when I attended art school, I spent a lot of time doing the history of children's book, and then the story of who Maurice Sendak is, or was, unfortunately, and what he was doing really enchanted me. I always loved his work, like in the Night Kitchen.
I'm not familiar with him. I'll have to look him up.
Oh, wonderful stuff. He did some groundbreaking work on the idea that a child in a book doesn't have to be a well-behaved child. And Where the Wild Things Are starts on the night that Max made mischief.
Oh, is he the one that did the Wild Things?
Yeah,
okay. That was the name of the theme for this year for the freezer burn in Alberta that I went to.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, no, it's been a great book for a lot of people, I think. And then afterwards, I was really affected by the classical stories, but the artwork that Mercer Mayer did.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Trina Shartman. She worked for Cricket magazine when I was a kid, and then she does classical fairy tales. So she did, the first book I ever saw of hers was King Stork, and I took it out of the library at school over and over again every time somebody else didn't have it, and I copied all the drawings over and over again. Yeah, I was really blown away by her stuff. Yeah, it was big. And that was really, Mercer Mayer also, I got into art college with a drawing, because we had a portfolio review. I did a drawing based on a drawing in one of his books, and when I showed it to a woman in charge of the illustration department, she tapped it and nodded, and she said, I see here the beginnings of primitive storytelling. And I was devastated, but I got in, so it was great, yeah.
What festivals do you like?
It's so funny, I was talking about this earlier today, about this being referred to as a festival, Wasteland. And what's so funny about it is I think that most of the people who participate in Wasteland would be horrified to think of themselves as being a festival.
Blasphemer!
So they would be horrified to have it called a festival?
So they would be horrified to have it called a festival, because I think that they're thinking of themselves outside of that, and that it's almost as if for them it's like a dance macabre, like a reverse reenactment, like we're keeping at bay the terrifying end that we've all been, as children and watching movies, grown to believe is possible. And but all that being true, and also I think that there's a real warrior cult here, like the idea that we're all tough and survivors, and yet having been to a lot of Burning Mans and I do Society of Creative Anachronism. So I fought in armor, and I hold a title there, and they have a very large event, which is much more like a festival than an SCA event called Penzic on the East Coast. I do that every year as well. And I found the spirit of what I would want in a festival very present here. People, in spite of looking tough and warrior-like, are actually squishy and lovely and charming. And people have been really friendly and very open about what they're doing and involving other people in those things. So, so whenever I think festival, I'm looking at these guys with mohawks and on their bikes and the war boys driving past, and I think to myself, are they identifying themselves as at the festival? I don't think they are, but I feel that way while I'm here. So I do those other two. I've done Burning Man for years, and then I also did, and I do Penzic every year.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that one before.
It's beautiful. It's in Pennsylvania, and it's the last week of July and the first week of August usually. And it's, I grew up in Northern California, and mostly Berkeley, and we have a really temperate climate and very little humidity. And it can be 90% humidity and not rain there. It's sticky. And it's really hot. And my first couple of times I was kind of just in this space of oh my God, how do people actually do this? But now when I go back, I acclimate
I grew
faster.
up in the East, used to that sticky, can't sleep at night thing.
Yeah, that sort of thing, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you have any other big art projects planned?
Well, I'm going to finish Wasteland, and I have actually, I have 3 children's books roughed out. And
are you doing the storyline?
And I'm also writing the story. And
so the teacher was right, the admissions person, you are a storyteller.
Yeah. And so the name of the books are going to be Gothic Tales for the Young. And I've done basically like caricatures of Mary Shelley and H.P. Lovecraft and Bram Stoker and the Bronte sisters and their brother. And they're just stories about how those people became who they were. So these are completely made up stories, but I did a lot of research for them. So I've dressed them in the right time period, and I've tried to involve the people in their lives that they had in their lives at the time.
So you're talking more about the authors as opposed to the book?
Yes, but also my belief in the book is that the kids started off as sort of creepy oddball kids, which is true of me and all my friends. so like proto-goths, and that they were always different and strange, and that at some level the idea of the books, each one's a slightly different take about that person and what makes them unique, but that in the end that being absolutely unique and totally true to it is a celebration of what you can do, as opposed to something that makes you necessarily a total outcast from the rest of society.
Are all 3 of the books the Gothic Tales?
Yeah, I'm just doing the Gothic Tales, so there'll be 5 in the end.
Oh, nice.
And there are 3 blocked out already, like I've designed all the drawings.
So that's one main character author for each?
One name character, right. So there's Mary Shelley has a very ugly doll, is the first one. And there's something unusual about the Stoker boy. And and the Lovecraft family needs a new nanny. He's those 3,
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah, I'm excited.
You definitely need a Patreon.
Yeah, I would like to. I've got enough of the roughs that now I have something to show people, like where the drawings are headed. Yeah.
Are you going to try and find a traditional publisher?
I will try, but I'm not going to contain myself based on.
Yeah.
I mean, because I've broken the rules by writing it and trying to illustrate it. That's fine if they know you, but if you're not Chris Van Ellsberg, then that's a hard thing to get.
Do you have any advice for aspiring artists?
Make art. Just do it, and don't allow anybody else's expectations to affect your process. It's very hard to make a living doing it, but if you find that it's the only thing you can do and be sane and happy, then you'll adapt to the circumstances you have till hopefully eventually the art will be the only thing you do. And it all sounds so high-handed and healy-feely, but in the end, it just seems to have been true for all of my friends who are artists, and definitely for myself. I mean, it's a rarity that people just step into the world and get to do exactly the kind of art they want to do. And when I see it, I'm so excited for those people. But it's been a long and winding trail for me, and I don't want anyone to think that that makes their journey any less valid than someone who just somehow, you know, art's always a combination. At least art that's making money is always a combination of talent and a huge amount of luck. It's just how you stumble into it, whether or not you happen to be one of those schmoozy people who's just born able to market yourself, or somebody who finds a patron who wants to market you, or if your mother ends up being somebody. I mean, there's so many things that go into it, aside from just having the earnest desire and the powerful talent. That just isn't enough. So that's what I would say, just do it.
And your web page is?
I'm jessicacohen.com, and it has all my illustrations on it, which shortly there will be a tarotofthewaste.com, which will have only the stuff related to the Wasteland deck.
Okay, so that's good to have.
Yeah.
Just have them connected somehow.
Yeah, no, I'll make sure that they are with that they can link to each other, but the Tarot of the Waste is such a totally different focus.
Well, it's a good name for if you can get the website.
I did that.
Oh, good. What have you learned by creating Tarot of the Waste?
Well, I did research into tarot for the first time, like serious research.
Had you ever been a tarot reader?
I'd always been drawn to the cards, and as a child, the illustrations enchanted me, and I don't think you can be raised if they want to do. And when I see it, I'm so excited for those people. But it's been a long and winding trail for me, and I don't want anyone to think that that makes their journey any less valid than someone who just somehow, you know, art's always a combination. At least art that's making money is always a combination of talent and a huge amount of luck. It's just how you stumble into it, whether or not you happen to be one of those schmoozy people who's just born able to market yourself, or somebody who finds a patron who wants to market you, or if your mother ends up being somebody. I mean, there's so many things that go into it, aside from just having the earnest desire and the powerful talent. That just isn't enough. So that's what I would say, just do it.
And your web page is?
I'm jessicacohen.com, and it has all my illustrations on it, which shortly there will be a tarotofthewaste.com, which will have only the stuff related to the Wasteland deck.
Okay, so that's good to have.
Yeah.
Just have them connected somehow.
Yeah, no, I'll make sure that they are with that they can link to each other, but the Tarot of the Waste is such a totally different focus.
Well, it's a good name for if you can get the website.
I did that.
Oh, good. What have you learned by creating Tarot of the Waste?
Well, I did research into tarot for the first time, like serious research.
Had you ever been a tarot reader?
I'd always been drawn to the cards, and as a child, the illustrations enchanted me, and I don't think you can be raised. I don't think you can be raised by hippies and not have had a tarot deck as part of your life in the beginning, very early on. So I was always drawn to it, and symbolism is important to me. And I've always been drawn to that as well. So when I started the decks, I realized right away that there was much more rich ground than I realized, and that the tradition of tarot was much older than I thought it was. And that because it's filled with Christian symbology that fed on much earlier symbology, that there are pieces of it that are very, very old. And so, and that the truth of it is that the core of the deck, Major Arcana, which is what I launched with, is a very simplistic breakdown of a hero's journey. So if you're into Jungian theory or Joseph Campbell, the overarching idea is that the Fool, which is 0 in the deck, is an innocent, new in the world, starting on his journey through life. And hopefully he's going to meet people and interact with places and environments and humans that will fill him filled with experiences that will enrich him both physically, mentally, and spiritually. And then there'll come times where choices are made based on how you use those experiences, which are like gateways. So you pass through these gateways. And tarot can speak to any of those things, physical or mental or spiritual. And I I didn't feel necessarily like I was a profound believer, but I did find that when I used the cards before I made my own, that every once in a while something ridiculous and specific would just seem to appear, like it just actually said something to me that was profound and helpful. And then I did the deck, and I did start with just the major arcana. I feel like you can actually do readings with the major arcana. It's just that they're very large picture readings. You can't get very specific with the major arcana. But you can talk about major ebbs and flows in your life and directions that you're pulled to, and what kind of things have surrounded you and nurtured you, and then what kind of things you might be drawn to. Big picture things are possible. And choosing the iconography that I was using for this, I wanted to rewrite it to reflect Wasteland versus the world that the tarot was invented for. And the world that the tarot was invented for is a world where things were new. And there's absolute confidence that you'll be able to eat what grows out of the ground, and you'll be able to drink the water that you stumble across, that the seasons will always be cyclical, and there'll always be 4 distinct seasons, and that women will always get pregnant, and men will always be able to get women pregnant. All the things that we take for granted in the natural order are always going to happen, because this is so ancient that our impact on the environment was so low that, you know, we still had to really consider these things all the time. We weren't separated. So these elements were very important to us. And by the time we get to the wasteland, the assumption is that we've done such damage to the environment and to each other that none of those things are necessarily true anymore. So the old symbols didn't seem to me to really speak about the wasteland. So I immersed myself in post-apocalyptic literature and movies, and I chose images that I felt were iconic for people, and I researched the wasteland while I was building for it, and then I came and I'm talking to people, and I want to flesh out the deck. I want to finish it by next year.
How many more cards would that be?
There are 22 now, and that's a minor arcana, and then the major arcana, and then the minor arcana is 56 cards for a total of 76
So they're
cards.
all actually arcana cards?
Yes.
Wow.
And
56 is a lot.
56 is a lot, but it's going to be great. Each suit has 14, and they each represent an element. And so usually you get wands and cups and pentacles and swords. And so for my deck, it's gas masks, water cans, shotgun, and gas masks, water cans, shotgun, and haversack to represent the 4 elements. Because for me,
what is a haversack?
A haversack is a large bag that, it's a common name for a bag that a soldier would have carried.
Oh, on their back.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it's not really a backpack. It's more like a purse, like a man purse.
Oh, okay.
And so that's a common thing for earlier period soldiers. They still use the term haversack, but originally it was like a bag that you would carry on your hip. But
is it different? This is an old army bag.
that could be called a haversack.
Oh, okay, cool.
And traditionally, because of carols, we'd be talking about the earth renewing, and you would be able to eat what came out of the ground. You would not be thinking of the haversack connected to earth, but I used it as an earth symbol because now what comes from the earth is what we can scavenge. We're not necessarily going to be able to eat everything and drink everything. So I wanted to represent the scavenging. The haversack would be where you would keep what you would find. Yeah. So it's been wonderful, and the research has been really kind of enlightening about the way I look at things and the way I'm seeing other people look at things. And I couldn't get over the idea that it really is like a dance macabre here. Like we're enacting what we don't want to have happen, and furiously dancing on the edge of your ruin. And I like that, actually. It seems to make sense to me.
Cool. So I will close
Wrap
out
this
this
up.
part.
Okay.
And so we'll just say
Bye.